Good morning and welcome to everyone joining us today. Super excited about this fireside chat we have here with the FreeAgent team and all about their migration to Jamstack powered by Netlify. We are gonna go ahead and get started with a quick round of intros. We do of course have a few kind of planned questions for the FreeAgent team, but this is really intended to be an interactive session. So we will wrap up with 15 minutes of audience Q&A. So please do keep thinking about those questions as they come up and submit them in the chat. To give you an idea of who's here on the panel, from the Netlify side, we do have myself and Ramin. Ramin is a senior solutions engineer and I'm an account manager. And we really work with businesses that are leveraging Netlify in their web work. I'll go ahead and let the FreeAgent team kick it off with an introduction and maybe some background on their business.
Okay, thanks, Nelson. FreeAgent, as a company, we provide accounting software for small businesses and their accountants and bookkeepers. So really just a piece of software that makes it easy for businesses of this size to kind of manage their finances, invoicing, accounting, expenses, MTD, VAT, and all that kind of stuff. So that's effectively what FreeAgent provides. That's the key product we provide as a company. In terms of personal introductions, my name is Olu. I'm an engineering manager in FreeAgent. I look after the website and marketing platform teams, and I kind of look after all the systems that underpin our ability to kind of engage our customers and existing customers and potential prospective customers across multiple channels, as well as applications. So on that basis, I would let Jeff introduce himself as well. Yep.
Hi there, thank you, Olu. My name's Jeff, as Olu said, and I'm a senior software engineer and at FreeAgent, and I work on the marketing platform team with Olu. And I think he's pretty well described the type of work that we do on a daily basis.
Nelson.
Cool. So we're going to go ahead and kick off the planned questions today. So for the FreeAgent team, can you give us an idea of where your Jamstack journey started from a technology perspective?
Yeah, sure. So I think as the title of this presentation kind of suggests, it was very much a self-managed solution. I think we should have some images that might actually kind of help just to talk through the whole process and how things, there we go, how things were set up. So I'll start with the original website stack there at the top. So what we had is our website code. It's a middleman static site that we use, and all the code for that was sitting in a GitHub repo. So anytime that we push to branches or merge code into production, then we had a Jenkins pipeline that would pick that code up. So Jenkins was managed by our dev platform team, and at this point, before we kind of moved to Netlify, that was all hosted in AWS. So Jenkins would pick up the changes, it would run the tests, it would then build the middleman site, and then take the contents of the middleman site and push that into an S3 bucket. And then if it was a production deploy, the kind of S3 bucket, the contents of that would then get moved across onto our production server, which again, our infrastructure, that was all self-managed it was 2 data centers in the south of England. Other options, if we wanted to then push it onto integration or staging servers, it was a case for the engineers. We could give another couple of commands in the terminal, and then again, it would lift the code from the S3 bucket and then move it onto our servers. So that was kind of the main website stack, just a bit of an overview. And the other part we had as well was we had a CMS, so that was more for our content editors. If they needed to make changes, say to blog articles, that type of thing. And we also had a bit of a mini deploy preview. So for the CMS, kind of similar to the website, if we made changes pushing into production, Jenkins would run the tests and build that and then push that onto one of our production servers. But if we needed to test that on pull requests, there's a bit more complexity of things that we kind of had to set up a build zone, kind of prep the server, and then kind of push the code onto there, and then before we can view the changes. And the deploy preview, as I say, that was for our comms teams. So it was really just an index page that they could go to. They could get a list of all the branches that were on the system, they could pick the one that they were working on and choose to view the preview for that. And then at that point, we had a few different instances that it would grab a free one, fetch the pull request, and then run a local middleman server, so so they could see their changes before they deployed into production. So I'd say very much self-managed solution that we had going.
Well, thanks for that kind of description, Jeff, and getting a feel for where things really started and a lot of the complexities there. So, maybe I'd like to talk a little bit more about the options you considered when you started off on this journey, right? And you were thinking about Jamstack. Could you tell us more about what you were considering in the migration to cloud infrastructure?
Yes. So just like Jeff mentioned earlier, we at the point where we were thinking of the migration, we already had a CI/CD pipeline running in AWS. So that's all the things we orchestrate via Jenkins. So it was really a question of, okay, do we move a bit more of the infrastructure that would underpin the website, the CMS, the previews? Do we move that into AWS as well, and effectively leverage all some of the services you have in AWS, like S3, Lambdas, CloudFront, and all of that stuff? Or versus moving the other way and just saying we'll go for a managed service like Netlify. So I think those were kind of like the real two competing options we had in front of us in terms of determining how the migration would have gone. I think apart from that as well, as a key consideration of the migration, we were very, very interested in keeping our stack the same, and also kind of not really moving too much of or not necessarily delving into two new technologies as part of the migration. So currently all our current setup at the time was JavaScript with a combination of a static site generator, which is middleman, combined with some sort of CDN in front of the deployed website, and using some a bit of Ruby code behind the scenes to kind of tie things together. So we're quite intent on keeping that the same as part of this migration and not really changing that side of things. So I think when it really boiled down to it, it was really just, do we want to do this ourselves and take advantage of individual services in AWS to kind of piece the whole thing together, versus just moving to a service like Netlify that gives you everything as a single package, and it's quite easy and a lot more nimble in terms of being able to get things up and running. So I think for us, those were kind of like the key considerations in terms of what else were we going to look at if it wasn't going to be Netlify. Yeah.
Awesome. So I think you did give us a little bit of an overview of what you ended up selecting, but I have this diagram here, and I think that does kind of show some of the points you mentioned. Were there any other points that you wanted to highlight, or would you rather give us more ideas as far as what influenced that final decision?
Yeah, in terms of the other things going into the final decision. So first was, what are the alternatives out there? But the other part was, there's a financial consideration here, and we needed to understand as a business the true cost of doing this ourselves versus using a managed service like Netlify. And that's not always easy to figure out, because at times as a company, you have all these different teams that work together to provision infrastructure and manage it. But it's at times it's a bit hard to put a finger on what the true cost of that actually looks like. So in our case, we kind of undertook a very simple exercise where we kind of looked at some of the services we already had running in AWS, specifically on the CI/CD side of things. And we also looked at potentially, if we were going to do this ourselves in AWS, what are the other services we're going to look at, what were the estimated usage and the cost involved. And then we also did a small exercise as well, trying to kind of account for the time of our DevOps team in terms of the time they were actually going to spend with us getting through the migration, and also the operational time that's going to be involved in actually keeping it running over time. So we factored all of that in to come to some sort of numbers that we could put side by side against the potential cost of doing this in Netlify. I think I should add though that still didn't paint the full picture, because at the end of the day, there was always another opportunity cost that we kind of struggled to put a number on, which is around, if we did it ourselves, we'll be committing the time of some of our more critical teams in the business to implement this and also look after it. And there's an opportunity cost of what other projects do we have in the business that are high priority that we potentially have to kind of push back a bit in order to make time for this migration. And you can't really put a number on that. You just need to understand how critical some of these future projects are to the business at that point in time. So it was made up of kind of like the bit we could put a figure on, and then the bit we couldn't really put a figure on, but we identified that, there is an opportunity cost to spending time ourselves doing this, and also the time we're going to use as the time we're going to, have to spend maintaining it at the same time. So I think from our point of view, those were kind of like the different bits that went into the picture to help us really get to a point where we said, you know what, this is the decision we're going to make in terms of how we proceed with migration.
Awesome. And yeah, this is what we hear from folks all the time. How do we quantify some of these deciding factors? I'm sure the audience as well, some folks here are also thinking about how do we bring Jamstack and Netlify into the business. So I think a lot of great points that you've mentioned there, Olu. So, once you made that decision and you decided, the Jamstack is going to be a good fit for FreeAgent, and we'll decide to use a service like Netlify for managing this, how did you go about preparing for that migration? Can you tell us and the audience more about the steps that were there?
Yeah, sure. So I think that image that you had up there gave a pretty good overview of where we ended up, but I think there's quite a few steps before we before we ended up there. So I think the first thing we wanted to identify was kind of what's a small kind of system that we can work on, that we can maybe move across and kind of test the water and see how it works. So we chose the CMS. That was the first part we decided to move across. So it was actually Netlify CMS that we were using. So we extracted that from our self-managed service. We set up a new repo for it, connected it to Netlify, and we got that live and working. So that was quite a nice way to test the water, to see how it all works. We could see how the build process worked, what it was like for getting the site live, all those kinds of things. So that was a nice starter, and we enjoyed the process. It was really easy to set up the site on Netlify. So at that point we thought, right, where can we go next? How can we start to migrate the next parts of the system across? So what we actually did, we got our main website repo and we connected that up to Netlify. We kept all our Jenkins pipeline, all that stuff running at the same time, so that was still live, but we had Netlify kind of running side by side with it, so it was doing all the builds and actually deploying the site as well. So we spent a lot of time just making sure the build process was working reliably. We also needed to make sure we could get all our tests running on there. We had sort of RSpec tests, we had Jest tests, there's a few different things, so we needed to make sure that whole process worked. And once we were happy with that, yeah, that was quite nice to get to that point, that we could then kind of start to take more measurements at that point to see, sort of, we looked at the Jenkins build to see how long that was taking in comparison to the Netlify build. We kind of broke it down into the stages of the Netlify build and kind of recorded that actually over the course of roughly about a week. And at the end of that, we're really happy with the Netlify. It looked really solid. It was really reliable. It was kind of pretty consistent actually, just in terms of all the builds. So that was working well. So I think at that point we kind of recognized that given the size of the instance that we were building things on with Jenkins, we knew would maybe need to step up to the high performance products on Netlify to try and get kind of something reasonably similar, or kind of try and beat those kind of deploy times and the performance that we were seeing. So that was the point we really got in contact with Netlify and we kind of discussed setting up a kind of a pilot scheme for a few weeks. So I think it was quite nice at that point, and I'd probably recommend doing it, that we actually had everything working well kind of before we actually went into the pilot phase. So the pilot phase then was more about trying to improve what we already had, to try and speed up the build process. There's a few things that the support teams and so on were able to help us identify where we could improve things there. So I think that was definitely a good idea to go into that with things working already pretty well. So yeah, I think at that point it was really just a case of doing the comparison again before what we had with the standard products and see how it compared. And yeah, we were starting to get really close to the build times that we were looking to see. And we also tested the high performance edge product as well on Netlify. So we used, personally ourselves, we were using web page test to kind of test out the performance of that. We were able to do measurements and kind of see how that was all working and how it compared to the standard edge as well. So that was quite a nice process. We had quite a lot of data to do the comparisons, and we could see that the high performance products were going to work for us. So at that point, we had a whole nice schedule of how we wanted to roll things out. The idea was to first of all try and roll out the deploy previews to our comms teams, but leave the production site as it was. And then once that was done, we would then migrate the production site. But as things go, the kind of plans never quite work out. So it turned out we got hit with a DDoS attack on, I think it was the 7th of January. It was late in the evening. Which actually ended up taking our website down. It was kind of attack coming from all around the world, and we managed to get the site back up again. But the attacker kind of went away, but came back again the next morning. And at that point, we were kind of discussing, if this keeps happening, if they keep trying to attack the site, are we in a position to actually just quickly migrate the whole site really quickly onto Netlify and just move the whole production site? Because we'd actually done quite a lot of prep work at this point, and we're confident that things would hold up well. There was some kind of work we wanted to do to tidy things up, but that could maybe wait till afterwards. So again, Friday night came, another attack came, and it was starting to take the website down. So we took the decision Friday night, not the best time to do these things, but lift the whole site, move it across onto Netlify, and it works really well in Netlify because they've got a distributed CDN all across the world. They were able to actually soak up that traffic really easily. So the site just stayed up, never went down. The attacker got bored, disappeared, never came back again. So it was working that well. We then just kept the whole site on Netlify, the production site. So that was the production moved over, and then over the course of the next week or the next month, we got the comms teams moved across onto the deploy previews, and then just gradually started to remove the other infrastructure that we had with Jenkins and all the other stuff. So yeah, it was a bit of a process to get the whole thing moved across. And as I don't know if you want to bring that image up again, just as that kind of final bit that we have. Yeah, there we go. So it's just very easy to manage, because what you have, you've got the website GitHub repo there and the CMS GitHub repo. So we have all the code for the site in there. The code for the Netlify functions lives in there. We've got the code for the build configuration lives in there. So that's really the only part that we have to manage now. Everything you see after that is managed by Netlify, and we push the stuff into there. The high performance builds has given us really good build times, and then once that's built, it then pushes on to the high performance edge. And we've got the deploy previews are come as standard with all that. It's not something previously we were having to kind of roll our own solution for that. It's all just kind of baked in with Netlify. So yeah, I think it works really well, and you can see it's nice and neat, and just much less for us to look after.
Awesome, Jeff, and thanks so much for the context. And that really sounds like quite an eventful Friday night. I'm glad it all worked out. And
yeah, and wouldn't recommend that. It's not the nicest, but thankfully the whole move across went very well.
Ultimately, a great story. Yeah. So thanks for that kind of anecdote on the migration and doing it during a DDoS attack. Maybe something that the audience will hopefully not have to experience. So what, now that you are live with this Jamstack site on Netlify, we're wondering, what has the experience been post go live, and what has the business impact been thus far?
Yeah, it's been really good since we've moved over. I think for starters, as a team, as the marketing platform team, we're now in a position where we have a lot more autonomy. We're a lot more self-sufficient, which is quite good, because for some of the projects we're looking to do this year in the business, we're able to get on them faster, and also it kind of simplifies our the process for kicking off our projects, mainly because we were able to take out that step of coordinating with other engineering teams for resources that would underpin a project of some of the size of some of the work we're doing right now. So because all we need to know is we need to work with our stakeholders, and once we're happy with that, we can just make a start. We don't really need to coordinate resourcing with DevOps and other teams. So it kind of makes us a bit more agile, and we can move on with our project a lot quicker. I think, like Jeff mentioned, it's nice to kind of have all our all our assets and code base at the same place under the same repo, which is quite good, nice and tidy. And I think more importantly as well for our DevOps team, which kind of really supports our main product, the software as a service accounting product which we offer. They're able to actually focus on more important requirements within the business that actually directly impact our product, rather than being slightly, distracted by having to support the marketing platform at the same time. So I think on the whole, it's been a very good experience. And this is just how many months in? This is give or take 4 months in. But we're starting to do some very interesting things, and I think we're definitely we're 100% sure that this was the right move for us as a business.
Awesome. Yeah. And I think one last question for the FreeAgent team, now that this migration is complete, what's next for FreeAgent? What will you folks be working on?
Yeah, interesting times ahead, but without going into too much of the specifics, we had a bunch of projects lined up from last year, and they all kind of really focus on improving the experience for our accountants and direct customers, and also prospective customers as well, in terms of learning experiences via our website, and also tailor the experiences in terms of how we get to kind of surface the features of our accounting software better, and tailor that based on some of the information we have about our current users. So we have a whole pile of different projects that's lined up for this year. Some of these are about learning, some of these about personalizing experiences for our users, but those are some of the key things we're looking to kind of embark on this year. And a bunch of them are already in motion as we speak. So I think in terms of what the future holds, it's interesting, exciting times, and I think it's quite good that we're in a position where we can actually start to deliver some of them. We can start to deliver some of this features for the business. I think the last note to add to that would be the fact that as a team, we're moving away from being we're moving into being more of a product or a feature team for the website, rather than an infrastructure team, if you get what I mean. Because now all of that is handled by Netlify, so we can actually focus on experiences we want to deliver on our marketing platforms, rather than trying to do that at the same time while you still maintain the infrastructure that underpins that. So I think that's where we are, and that's where we think we'll be for the future.
I think actually, just to add to probably the previous question, actually, just in terms of how we find things with Netlify as well, I thought it might be just quite useful just to mention from the engineering point of view. Actually really enjoyed working. It's got Netlify Dev, which is it's really nice kind of workflow for working with with the functions for testing that. Again, because everything's all together, you can kind of test the whole flow. It's not like the functions are off in a different system and they're quite difficult to test. So it makes that whole process really nice. It's and even other things that kind of find we've got Netlify Dev live. So being able to, it's really easy for like webhooks. If you want to test stuff coming back in, you can give it that site, and you can see all the console logs and everything coming up in the terminal. So it's really good. Really enjoying that part of it. And yeah, just also a good shout out to your support team as well, because I haven't needed it too much, but just in terms of there's the few things that we wanted to try and improve on with the build even afterwards, and they've been really good in terms of coming back to us quickly, giving us lots of help and pointers and how we can improve things. And I think the Netlify community as well, even just the free for everyone to access and kind of get different hints and tips on there. I think that's really useful resource as well. So I've learned quite a lot on there too.
Awesome, Jeff, and I really appreciate all the shout outs as far as the tooling you're finding useful, and Olu, great to hear that you'll be able to focus on features and shipping new functionality. I think that's where a lot of the folks here in the audience want to get as well. So now that we have kind of completed our planned questions, I did want to remind everyone here in the audience, now's your opportunity to ask these folks on the FreeAgent team any questions you might have about their migration, or kind of how they brought Jamstack and Netlify into their business, and some of the steps they took. So we do have one question here, which is, Jeff, I think you had mentioned
bringing down build times and all about maybe optimizing there, can you tell us what other steps you took to reduce build times?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned briefly earlier about the Netlify build is almost kind of split into kind of three sections. So it's like the pre-build phase, the actual build itself of the site, and then there's a post-build phase. So one of the things I could see what Netlify does after you've performed a build, it pushes all that code into a cache. So so whenever you go to build the site out again, you don't need to reinstall all your gems and all your npm packages and download the whole GitHub repo again. But we noticed one of the things that our cache was massive. It was about 2.4 gigabytes, so it was taking it took a wee bit of extra time to kind of fetch that and extract it. So again, we're talking about support, and got in touch with the support just to find out a bit more about what was actually in that cache and kind of where it was coming from. So we kind of found out it was, to be honest, most of it was to do with our GitHub repo, because it's been around for a long time, and it's been very, very big, and there's been a lot of history behind that. So we ended up doing a bit of work with our dev platform team to essentially do a rewrite of the GitHub history to get rid of, there's a lot of stuff in there that didn't make sense anymore, didn't need to be in the repo, and we're able to spend a bit of time and just trim the size of that down. So we ended up bringing that down by, I think we got it down to about 1.1 gigabytes it is now. So we shaved off quite a chunk of it, and I think that even that in itself, that was a good time saving. That was probably about 30 seconds or so off the build times. Another part that we did was Netlify has this bit, I don't think it's that well advertised, but there's like a cache folder that you can push content into during a build process. So we're kind of on our test runs, because the high performance build machine is over kind of 10 cores. We were splitting all our tests across those, but they were just kind of randomly assigned, so the tests weren't particularly well balanced. So one set of tests on one process would finish really, really quickly, and another one might take a long time, so they weren't balanced particularly well. So what we did at the end of a test run was take the times for each one of the tests and then push the results of that into that cache folder. So the next time we did another build, we could pull that information down from the cache, and then we could distribute our tests out evenly across all the processes to get all the tests balanced a lot better. And again, that was another thing that took probably another, I think it was roughly about another 30 seconds or so off the build time. And then the other part was just more in our code base itself. I don't know if anyone here kind of works with Ruby, with middleman, but calling partials. So these partials are shared bits of code across, pretty much appear in all the different pages on the site, like say something in a header. They're quite slow to call in Ruby, so it was just a case we were able to cache some of that stuff during the course of the build and just call it from cache when we were building out the site. So that took another chunk of time off the build. So yeah, we were able to actually take a good chunk of time off, and then say just working with support just to get help with some of the stuff that we couldn't necessarily see, but they were able to kind of see from their build logs and so on. So that was so that was quite a good way to get things done.
Very cool. Thanks, Chef. And we do also have for folks who are on the line, we do also have quite a few resources that we're happy to share with folks who are kind of going through this process of optimizing builds as well. Going into the next question we had from the audience, was there an impact on other stakeholders on the team? So I'm imagining that means folks who weren't kind of in your immediate web team or kind of on the broader FreeAgent team. What was the impact of this migration for them?
I'll take that. In terms of impact, there was very little. Some of our key stakeholders will be the content editors, who usually, they manage all the content on the website. So effectively, the goal of the migration from our point of view was do it so smoothly in such a way that they would not even know something has changed. It's almost like trying to change the engine of a car while it's in motion. Is kind of like the good analogy for this. And we're able to achieve that. So for all intents and purposes, there was maybe a few nuances in terms of slight differences, but we were able to do the migration start to finish and not really have any impact, no downtime, and no impact to the users. They would probably tell you was that maybe they just noticed things were a bit faster. But apart from that, this all happened kind of like under the hood with no downtime and no impact on any of the teams, which in my view is a good thing and was the target of the migration in the first place. We wanted this to be done in such a way that it was seamless. You couldn't really tell anything on the user side of things that something was changing in terms of the infrastructure that was underpinning the website and also the systems that allow you to work on the website. So it was pretty much a smooth process with no real downtime or any problems from a stakeholder point of view.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think it's got a lot of credit to Netlify in terms of the build config, because I guess some people might have some worries about it. It's very, very fixed. You maybe don't have as much kind of flexibility in terms of what you can actually do with it. But yeah, we've kind of found, with this Olu said, because we're able to kind of almost replicate everything sort of in terms of how the users were seeing things. We're able to make quite a lot of our own configuration on the build and how things were kind of set up. So I think there's actually quite a lot you can do. Netlify, there's a TOML file that they have. We were able to use that as part of the build configuration, but you can also we were able to give it on Ruby, there's these rake commands, so we could actually come out of that TOML file and give it a command. Then we could start to extract a whole pile of other configuration and make it really, really unique to what we actually needed to do for the deploy. So it's been really good, kind of learning how to take advantage of all that and how to improve the config.
Probably also what mentioning the plugin system as well, because we did roll our own solution in terms of trying to make sure we could alert people within the business once a deploy preview was ready, because we didn't use the built-in alerting system that came with Netlify. But again, that was seamless. We rolled our own solution in a very short period of time. Exactly what we had when we were Jenkins. Same thing, distributing it to the same channels and with the same process, and we were able to do that. I think that was one of the few things we did ourselves, but it was a very, very small piece of work. And the plugin system in itself is the way the plugin system works is a testament to the fact that we could roll something really quickly and effortlessly like that to kind of achieve what we wanted. So I think that was a good one as well.
Very cool. Yeah, and then just looking at this, there is one last question we did get here open, which is what were the driving factors in that migration to the cloud from your business perspective?
So it's kind of like nothing, groundbreaking. Is the usual factors really around. We've had the website and the infrastructure in data centers for so many years, and we were at the point where we really needed to start to look at scalability for starters, and we knew that because we'd already been using pockets of AWS services while still in the data center, we knew that moving to some sort of cloud service was the best way to go. It was a function of what cloud service was it going to be. So first it was a system, an infrastructure service that allows us to scale better, and also to keep an eye on our cost as well, because like having a data center, that's pretty much a fixed cost regardless of how you use it. Meanwhile, moving into some sort of cloud service will allow us at least have some sort of variety in terms of on-demand pricing for resources we use. So I think those were some of the key factors that kind of influence our decision to kind of move to the cloud anyway. It's I think it's the reason most businesses tend to do this kind of things.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks again, FreeAgent folks. This has been a really insightful discussion, and I'm sure that the audience has also really gathered a lot about just how to bring Jamstack and the modern way of building for the web into a business. So really appreciate the insights you've given us today. Thanks to everyone as well who kind of asked questions here. For folks who are on the line, I'll just add the kind of link here where you can ask any follow-up questions that you might have for today's session. And we can follow up on those from the Netlify side. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks all.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Okay.
Take care.
All right.